All right, I know you guys have been waiting for this video for a while now. The reason why it's taking me so long to publish this video is because I'd written up a script, filmed it, and then lost all the data. And this was over a year ago, and I just couldn't bring myself to create this video again. But here it is. I even lost the script for it too, so I had to start completely from scratch. It's gonna be a little bit different from my original, but hopefully just as meaningful and as helpful for you guys. And that's talking about flow state. So I think the thing to remember is that you've probably heard of these ideas, these recommendations that I'm going to give you throughout this video somewhere else. But I guess if you have heard them before, then it's just reinforcement that these things do work, and these are the things that do work for me. I think to begin with, we need to talk about what flow state is and why it's so helpful in your productivity. Honestly guys, since I learned about flow state and since I actively incorporated or tried to reach flow state whenever possible in my work, I have seen my output in work increase so much. And for you, it could be your output in study, it could be your output in studying music or studying a language or whatever other hobby that's not related to actually studying for school. So what is flow state? It's basically when you forget that time exists and you just live in the present moment. So you're not thinking about your next bubble tea. You're not thinking about all the messages that you've got waiting for you on Facebook that you can't wait to check. You're not thinking about 8 p.m. when you're going to let yourself check Insta and how you're just waiting for it, but you're actually in flow state. And everybody has experienced flow state before. Flow state is when you're out with friends and you forget that time exists because you're just having an awesome time with them. Flow state is when you're engrossed in a movie and you forget that everything else exists in the world because you're just so captivated by what's happening in front of you. And the added bonus of this is you're gonna feel really positive as well. When you do meaningful things where you get lost in time, it's a positive experience. You're not feeling like, oh, I need to study and all right, let's get on with it. You're just in it. You know what I mean? So here are the 3 main points that I consider every time I try to induce flow state. First thing is that you need to eliminate distractions. This is pretty straightforward, and I'm sure this is like the main one that you guys would have heard anywhere. But how do I do it for myself? What I do before I know I have to sit down and focus on work, and for you it might be focus on study, is I get all the social media urges out of me. So if I want to check Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, I will do all those things first. And it doesn't mean that I just sit there for hours actually surfing them. I'll just check for my notifications if that's what I'm after. I'll check if my favorite YouTuber has posted, and that's pretty much it. And that way I'm sort of content. I know that there's not anything sort of waiting, pinging at me. And this for me probably takes maybe like 5 minutes in the morning. So it's not like a big chunk out of my day. And I know I probably won't have the urge again to check until lunchtime when I'm actually having a break. A couple of extra things I do is I have Facebook feed blocker, which has been really helpful. Sometimes I need to open Facebook to check for messages related to work. For you, it might be a friend who's maybe collaborating with you on a project, but then as soon as you open the page, you just like want to keep scrolling, right? So by blocking that feed, it just makes things super easy for me that I've only got the messages to look at. And the other thing is I actually delete the Instagram app off my phone. I've talked about this before on my personal YouTube channel, but my relationship with Instagram isn't and hasn't always been the best. I think it's probably the most time drainer, makes you feel like crap platform for me. I find YouTube to be super educational. Facebook, again, I can't really check anything apart from messages. But with Instagram, I find that I'm bombarded with a lot of, perfect lives and all these things that I just don't really need in my life. And so I delete that app, and whenever I need to access that app, I have to do it through Google Chrome, which is super buggy and it's really hard to use, which then sort of puts myself that much more distance from Instagram because I don't really want to use it as much if it's so hard to use, And then the last thing is that I turn off all notifications for all of my apps as well, because I don't really need them until I want to check them. You know what I mean? I don't want my phone to demand my attention. I want to demand the phone's attention. I read a book called Deep Work, and this really revolutionized how I think about flow state. So one quote that I really like is, once your brain has become accustomed to on-demand distraction, it's hard to shake the addiction even when you want to. You have to understand that it's really hard for you to stay in control. And so by doing all of these things, it gives me that control back again. Second tip, inducing flow. So how do I induce flow? One really easy way is I actually switch off the time on my laptop. I find that if I've got the time there, I'm constantly flicking back and forth looking at the time, wondering when lunch is coming, wondering when dinner's coming, or when bedtime is coming. It's only like a minute distraction, and it's the smallest of things, and you probably do it without you even realizing it. But once I flick off that time, I have no gauge as to what is happening elsewhere. So I can actually focus on what's just in front of me. Now you might be asking, but what if you've got a class to go to at this o'clock? Or what if you need to jump onto a meeting at this o'clock? What I do is I set an alarm on my phone. I set it for 10 minutes just before I need to jump into a meeting, or if I need to, take a break from work and go somewhere, get in the car. Easy. The second point here is I use music to help induce flow. I find listening to music that doesn't have many lyrics, I've been really into like your chill electronic these days. So I'll, put up a list for you. It's not necessarily everyone's cup of tea. Definitely wasn't my cup of tea a couple of years ago. But I find that just having these songs on loop just get me into the zone. It's just not the same with like hip hop, R&B, or pop. As much as I love those type of genres, music that doesn't have lyrics that sort of sounds the same a lot of the time, that's gonna be it. And the other thing I always remember is that it takes about 20 minutes for you to get into flow. So if you're not really in the mood of something, you gotta just aim for 20 minutes of doing it. And you'll find that after that 20-minute time, you will be in it. It's just something that goes on in the brain, some sort of chemical interaction that I don't know how to explain it, but it's been proven. Maybe what I can do is like link you some resources. The third thing, and I think this is the thing that a lot of people don't talk about, and it's knowing your limits. Here's another quote from Deep Work. The most adept deep thinker cannot spend more than 4 hours in a state of true depth. So, in other words, you can't spend more than 4 hours in flow state. At least not in its truest form. You can probably still keep working and still think you're in flow state, but you're probably not. And that's when the distractions start happening. That's when you start thinking about dinner. That's when you think about checking your messages. That's when you start task switching, which is when you start doing like the smaller, easier things, like checking your email, or maybe just ticking off the smaller, easier tasks because you're sort of running out of fuel. So let me tell you a little story. So often people will always ask me, how did you study when you were in high school? How did you study for VCE? And I have talked about it on this channel before, but I don't like to talk about my experience as the way it should be. And I'm kind of embarrassed of how I actually studied in VC. I was your true Asian nerd. I had no idea about study productivity and all these kind of things that are now available everywhere on the internet. It was just sort of like a study hard, work hard, get better marks kind of attitude. So I would study for hours in a night. I'd literally just get home, have a shower, do a bit of work, have dinner, and then study all the way until bedtime. So that was like 4 or 5 hours a night of studying. It just wasn't productive. And that's why I got burnout, which I've talked about on this channel before. Because I've also learned from that experience, for me as a business owner, or entrepreneur, as some people say, entrepreneurs, there are a lot of stories out there about how they work 60 to 80 hours per week. And I don't know, that's just not me. And a lot of people are really surprised, but I only work 20 to 30 hours each week, because I think what is important is when you do sit down and do the work, you need to be productive. And rather than sitting there for 60 hours and only being 50% productive, I'd rather do it at optimum 100% productivity, but only do it for 30 hours. You know what I mean? So I think that you can apply that in your study as well. Longer doesn't necessarily equal better. And it's because your brain can't hack it for that long. No matter what you think, there's just no way you could be that focused for that long. So what I think is the most important thing here is to be able to recognize when you're starting to do shallow work. When you keep switching between subjects because you don't want to push through with a challenging question, things like that. Like when you're no longer just in one state of flow and just working in a streamlined way. When I feel like I'm no longer being productive, I actually just stop working and I go and do repetitive, mindless tasks. So these might be things like exercising, it might be cleaning, and doing these tasks can actually help your subconscious brain help you click things into place. Things where you're running into barriers, you're finding something challenging, a question that you can't answer. If you go off and do something else, I guarantee you that's when you'll be able to solve it. That's like when, the best ideas come to people in the shower. It's because you're not actively forcing your brain to think about it. You're letting it work in the background. And I 100% live by that. This is also why I don't work the 60 to 80 hours. Like I just don't think that it's the best use of my time. And if you're interested, then I could talk about this in more detail and what my workday actually looks like on my personal YouTube channel. So, head on over there, subscribe to let me know if you're keen for this type of video. But yeah, I hope that sort of gives you some insight into what flow state is. If you've never heard of it before, I'd highly recommend you look up about it, learn about it, because it is 100% going to make you more productive. I think too often when it comes to productivity videos, it's all about how can you be more productive, basically making yourself into a machine and just going. But that's just not how we are. And I think we need to acknowledge that, understand our limitations, and be able to work around them. I hope this video was helpful. Please give me a thumbs up if you did find it helpful so that I know to make more of these type of videos. Should I make more of these videos? I don't know. You guys tell me. I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.